Yeah, I was gonna ask if you were enjoying her now.
Yeah.
She's out there making
Thank you.
noise.
Hey.
I don't know if we have hers.
I'd like to open this planning commission meeting at 6 p.m., please. Commissioner Lothrop, could you lead us with the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Michelle, may we have a roll call, please?
Chair Liu,
Present.
Vice Chair Bakta,
Here.
Commissioner Leach,
Here.
Commissioner Truxillo.
Here.
Commissioner Lothrop,
Here.
and Commissioner Lind is excused.
Item number 4, public comment. Notice comment on matters not calendared on the agenda. When recognized by the chair, it is requested that you please state your name and address for the record, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Under California law, the Planning Commission is prohibited from generally discussing or taking action on items not included in the agenda. However, the Planning Commission may briefly respond to comments or questions from members of the public. Therefore, the Planning Commission will listen to all public comment but will not generally discuss the matter or take action on it. Item number 5, consent calendar. Notice to the public. Sorry.
I wasn't sure if there was anyone here for public comment for items.
I
on the
see.
agenda.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Apologies. Item number 5, consent calendar. All matters under the consent calendar are considered routine by the commission and will be acted on by one motion. May, filing and approval of Planning Commission minutes from August 23rd. Any public comments on item number 5? And seeing none, we'll move on. Would
And we
someone-
need to get someone to
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll
make
make
a
so-
the
yeah,
motion
so-
to approve the
I'll
minutes.
move that we approve.
Procedural. So regarding public comments and then seeing no public comments, would then the motion be made?
You could just, at that time, you would just close the public comment
Okay.
period and move on.
Okay. So I will see, there were no public comments. We will close the public comments on the consent calendar. And would someone like to make a motion?
Yeah, I move that we approve the consent calendar.
May we have a roll call, please? Oh, would someone like to second?
second it.
Sorry, it's been,
Yeah.
yeah, quite a
That is
day.
your Second, thank you very much.
Thank you. May we have a roll call, please?
Chair Liu,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bakta,
Yes.
Commissioner Gaitis,
Yes.
Commissioner Leach,
Yes.
Commissioner Truxillo,
Yes.
Commissioner Lothrop. Minutes of the Planning Commission meeting held on August 23rd, 2022, approved as written.
Item number 6, public hearing. Item A, request to modify the conditional use permit for 1440 North Main Street, the Bishop Veterinary Hospital. So I'd like to open the public hearing and ask Ms. Gabala if she could review the item for the commission.
Good evening, Chair Liu and Commissioners. It's nice to see you this evening. The first item this evening, as introduced, is with regards to a request to modify the conditional use permit for the Bishop Veterinary Hospital facility located at 1440 North Main Street, which is also known as Highway 6. The conditional use permit was granted by your Planning Commission April 26, 2022 to allow for a veterinary hospital at the location to be constructed over 2 phases, including a crematorium. Prior to the approval of that conditional use permit, your commission also certified a negative declaration for the project. In addition to the other project elements that were considered by the negative declaration, Aesthetics were included and no impacts were found by the proposal. Subsequent to your approval, the applicant is now proposing to reuse an existing structure in the building to house the approved crematorium use. Rather than construct, location of the crematorium is moved from the northeast corner of the property to the southeast corner of the property into an existing building. This is to assist with the high construction costs for the project. But it does change in a substantial enough way the conditional use permit site plan that was approved by your commission, as well as the negative declaration, requiring that your commission approve the modification to the permit and to the negative declaration. Staff has analyzed the proposed location and does not find that any new impacts or additional impacts will be created by relocating the facility. Although it's on a slightly less discrete location on the property from Highway 6, it is within an existing building. So no new impacts, aesthetic impacts in particular, would be created by moving the facility. All of the surrounding property owners were noticed in accordance with the previous conditional use permit hearing. No comments have been received on this item. I'd like to say that staff is considering this largely a formality and sees no concerns with the proposal from the applicant. That being said, I'm happy to take any questions from your commission. There are site plans in the back that illustrate the new proposed location there on the approximate southeast corner of the property. But staff would recommend that you hold a public hearing and then in the sequence, adopt a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Bishop, certifying amendment to the negative declaration for conditional use permit 1440 North Main Street, and then adopt a resolution approving the request to modify the conditional use North Main Street for the Bishop Veterinary Hospital, allowing for the applicant to relocate the crematorium to the existing facility. Thank you.
Would the applicant like to add any additional information for the commission? It's not in the, thank you. Are there members of the public who would like to make a comment on the item? Okay, we'd like to close the public hearing on item A and ask Ms. Kabala if she had anything additional to add.
Happy to take your questions. Nothing to add to my staff report at this time. Thank you.
I just had a quick,
Okay, sorry. At this point, would that be part of, would you like to add it as part of the
Public comment.
commission?
We're good to go into
Okay.
commission discussion. Thank you.
yeah, no, I was thinking the public hearing was closed.
Okay.
I just had a question, in the table where it says proposed setback, that's just the existing setback of the structure that's going to house the crematorium, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, and because I did visit the site the last time, but I don't recall. The building is sitting in that location right now. It's not being moved from another part of the property to
That
that
is
location.
correct.
That's it.
Any additional? Was the crematorium stack going to be the same height as proposed in the first building? And so, okay, to mitigate whatever biomass would be afterburned or whatever the terminology is.
And also, I think it's covered in the staff report, but just to clarify, the crematorium already has to meet California and EPA, whatever standards for emissions. And so it's going to meet those emissions, whether it's in this location or whether it's on the other side of the property, right?
That's exactly correct. And all the original conditions of approval would continue.
Any other comments or discussion? Would somebody like to make a motion to?
I'll move that we adopt a resolution of the City of Bishop, State of California, approving a request to modify the condition. A resolution certifying an amendment to the negative declaration for the conditional use permit for 1440 North Main Street.
I'll second.
Do we have to read through the findings or?
No, you do not.
Also, number 3, to adopt the resolution approving the request to modify the conditional use permit. Do we need to state both those items?
I am not entirely certain that we need an independent roll call for each, but I think it would be fine if we did
It-
so.
Would you like it as each
You can
one?
do them both together.
We can do them both
Oh,
together.
Read them
okay.
both together.
you.
Okay.
Just modify
Thank you
your
very much.
motion to include both.
Okay, can I change my motion then to approve the resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Bishop, State of California, certifying an amendment to the negative declaration for the conditional use permit of 1440. Approve the resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Bishop, State of California, approving the request to modify the conditional use permit for 1440 North Sierra Highway as written.
And I'll second that.
Thank you.
And may we have a roll call?
Chair Lu,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bakta,
Yes.
Commissioner Gaius,
Yes.
Commissioner Leach,
Yes.
Commissioner Truxillo,
Yes.
Commissioner Lothrop.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Moving on, item B. Consideration of the development agreement between the City of Bishop and Hug Holdings LLC for operation of storefront cannabis dispensary to be located at 175 South Main Street. With that, I'd like to open the public hearing. Ms. Kabala, could you review the item for us?
Good evening again, Commissioners. The first item this evening is with regards to a development agreement with NUG Holdings One LLC for operation of a storefront retail cannabis store to be located at 175 South Main Street. Before I begin, I did want to bring to the Commission's attention that we received a revised C to the development agreement, which is a revised signage plan.
You want me to
Drew will hand those out for me. Thank you. That are also available for the public and on the City of Bishop Planning Commission website as well. The City Council selected 2 candidates to proceed through the permitting process to operate a storefront business in the City of Bishop. This is consistent with the ordinance that your commission adopted, as well as the procedures that have been adopted by the City Council for the permitting process for cannabis businesses in the City of Bishop. Pursuant to the zoning code governing cannabis retailers, a development agreement is required and is intended to include development standards, signage, security plans, a description of community benefits, annual review periods, contractual payments, and defaults and remedies. This evening, staff is requesting that your Planning Commission review and recommend approval of the agreement as written. As I mentioned, the retailers and the locations have been selected by the City Council, and the Planning Commission does not have authorities for modifying the selected candidates by the City Council. The term of the development agreement is 5 years from the date that the developer begins commercial operations, with options to renew for 7 years with approval with the City Council. The agreement includes regular meetings with the city administrator to discuss any issues that might be associated with the business. Both of the selected cannabis retailers have satisfied all the requirements of the development standards as it relates to setbacks and zoning. The site plans and the elevations and signage plans are included as exhibits A, B, and C to the development agreement for your consideration. The security plan has been reviewed and approved by the police chief and the city administrator, and that will be kept under confidential cover by the City of Bishop. The contractual payments to the City of Bishop for the first 5 years of operation are begin in 2022 on an escalating scale, beginning at $15,000 and concluding in 2026 at $100,000. Prior to the end of that term, the developer is required to meet with the city administrator to reestablish the city's compensation based on the actual sales volume of the previous 3 years. The agreement also establishes the community benefits that will be provided by the developer, which includes a community relations contact provided to all businesses and residences with 100 feet pursuant to the ordinance, Quarterly meetings within the first business year with the city administrator to discuss the costs, benefits, and community issues related to operation of the business. $5,000 a year provided to health organizations and educational institutions for public education, and a contribution of $25,000 a year into a community fund that will distribute contributions to smaller nonprofits and odd hack and community groups on an as needed basis. As I mentioned, staff is seeking your approval as the development agreement as written, and the Planning Commission does not have authority to reconsider the retailers, the locations that were selected by the City Council. In the event that the developer defaults on any of the provisions of the agreement, the city has administrative procedures set forth, whatever the default is. And if the developer does not correct the breach of the contract within 30 days of written notice, the city may terminate the developer's rights provided within this agreement. At this time, staff would request that the Planning Commission review and recommend the City Council adopt an ordinance to approve the development agreement between the City of Bishop and NUG Holdings One LLC as written. Concludes my overview of the staff report. I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I add just a couple of comments?
Yes, Mr. Hildebrand.
Hi, Russell Hildebrand, Deputy City Attorney. Just a little more background. This is rather an unusual development agreement for the Planning Commission to consider. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Development agreements typically involve more complicated land use approvals, but in fact, the land use approval in this case has been granted by either the zoning code or the decisions of the City Council, as well as the applicant. Primarily, this agreement is a vesting of the current rules entitling the applicant to operate in that location in exchange for payments to the city. So because it's a statutory development agreement, it's required by law to come to you for approval and a recommendation to the City Council. And that's why it's before you, but it's odd because it's not actually a land use approval. It's more of a contractual agreement between the city and the applicant for vesting of rights in exchange for compensation to the city during the term. So not sure if you've seen development agreements before, but this one is a little unusual, and hopefully those comments help you. Thank you.
Any other municipalities in the state who have similar agreements?
Yes, many.
Okay.
Yeah, and many that I work with.
Any questions for Elaine or council regarding the background information?
Not before public comment.
If the applicant is here, would they like to address the commission?
Latham Martinez, founder of Sundial Collective and one of the applicants on for NUG Holdings. Elaine and I spoke, and maybe I should have brought this up, but I'm pretty sure you guys can make recommendations to the City Council about the development agreement. They can, correct? The only thing I would add is it's probably going to take roughly a year to open. I would say that the payments should start at about that time. And again, this might be offline a little bit because we spoke quite a few times, but just looking at it, building out a retail establishment costs about $1 million roughly. The La Casita building or the old La Casita building for sure costs that much. And take, depending on planning and building, at least a year. So I would say when commercial operations start, which I know Elaine kind of mentioned that the development agreement starts once commercial operations start, but payments I think do start now. Whether you guys want to recommend that as a change to City Council, I'm not sure that that's something you can do or would do. Again, I'd make this comment because I operate more than one, in fact, 15 cannabis businesses currently. And, it's a tough market. It's not what people think it is. So it's nice to be able to spend money when you start making money. So that's the only comment I'd have. Other than that, I really like it. And if that isn't something you guys can consider, totally fine as well.
Any public comments on the matter? There being no public comments, we'll close the public hearing and move on to commission discussion.
In response to Mr. Martinez's question, I would defer to Mr. Hildebrand as to whether it would be negotiate the fee schedule in a modification going to the city council, if that was the planning commission's recommendation. If the commission chose to do so, we did have a similar conversation with the other applicant, and their payment schedule begins in 2022. I would recommend that if it is appropriate, and we're capable of making that recommendation, that we would make the payment schedule commensurate between both applicants.
So did you start 2023 or
It started in 2022 for
so it already
Woodville.
started?
Yes.
It's prorated or it's, okay.
Oh, I apologize. I
23.
just don't remember what year it is. Yeah, 23.
Sorry. So
So
the second agreement starts in 2023.
That is correct.
It's something, I think it's the rabbit brush, just. Yeah. Could I ask, in the rendering, there's a bit of landscaping. Is that per what has been required of other developers, or is that just a nicety that won't, there's some pots and whatnot in front?
And the pots in front would, I mean, I'm not.
Is that Caltrans right of way?
Yes, it's Caltrans right away, so it would require encroachment permit from Caltrans. We would certainly love to see NUG fulfill the elevations as proposed in the development agreement, including landscaping. And in the downtown specific plan, we require landscaping within the property site. In this particular instance, the building occupies the entire property site. But we would encourage the applicant to coordinate with Caltrans for landscaping.
And you may not know the answer to this. Do you know if Caltrans would say permit a window box? Like with the proposed remodel of the front, if say, for instance, Caltrans does not permit potted plants in
I
front?
do not know the answer to that question.
It's highly likely that they would, but also I think that this photo that they were able to kind of Photoshop on is a little bit outdated. There is landscaping in front of there currently, and that's why it looks kind of different, the trees and such that the city has put in there. But yeah, I don't think it'll, anything against the building they would be opposed to, as long as they have the clearances they need.
Okay, thank you. Just beautification is important as well.
Well, frankly, I think the proposal already looks better than anything else on that block. So
So would you be, if I may ask, if the rendering is accurate, so that is quite extensive remodeling with regard of removing the stone, the mortared stone that is in place, and that's the intent, to get it to look similar to this.
I have a question, and I'm not sure who's going to answer this one, but because this is an unusual situation in which we're considering the development agreement and not our norm, does that change at all, in any part, what we're allowed to consider in our decision?
Could I ask for clarification to be more specific?
You've been saying that this is an unusual situation. It's not our normal, what we're allowed to consider. Do we have to think differently? Is there any rules that I'm not aware of that I have to, or is it just as simple as what we've been doing in the past?
I think it's,
I would think it would be just as simple as what you've been doing in the past, actually simpler, because you don't actually have the land use considerations
Right.
that you would in terms of neighborhood compatibility, zoning code compliance, general plan compliance. Those.
Oh, right. That
So
actually,
it-
not only, that answers the question, because it does change what we're allowed to consider. We do not consider those conditions.
I have a question, and this is really for the city. but part of both of these agreements is this $5,000 annual contribution to health organizations and educational institutions to develop and make available to youth organizations and educational institutions, public education plan, et cetera. And then also the $25,000 to the community fund. But there's, obviously in this agreement, there's precious little detail about who the recipients will be, how that will be administered, how that will be enforced, who's going to oversee what the funds are actually spent on. And I was wondering if the city had any comment about that.
I have some thoughts about it, and I'll defer to Mr. Dishon on that as well. I think during the discussions of the ordinance with your commission and the council, the $5,000 to community organizations and educational programs, there was conversation about that and who would be appropriate in administering and creating those, whatever that educational material would be. We haven't at this time done outreach to county and the educational partners to establish that program, but I think that's where we would be looking to go, is probably a partnership with Health and Human Services and other existing organizations in the community who, have the expertise and the programs in place to be administering at least that educational component. Likewise, for the $25,000 contribution, which is also consistent between both applications, I think that city would have administration over those funds, and that program also has not been developed.
Okay. So, but the city and maybe the planning department in particular will be responsible for those programs and nailing down those details.
The city will be responsible for developing a program for administering the funds, and I don't believe it would go through the planning department. I believe it would go through administration.
Okay, and that plan for administering the funds would also include some form of dollars to NIH, and then it just disappears into a pot. And how do we see what they've done with that, and whether it was actually spent on the purposes that are outlined in this document?
Yeah, I think that'll be up to us to develop some type of agreement between us and the retailers, and more at our level. Well, they've already made this commitment to these funds, so we need to figure out a way to make sure the funds are used properly and accounted for. And both of them have some gestures to where they want to put their funds to. So I think this is just another detail that doesn't have to be worked out today, but needs to be worked out within that 2023 year.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think the Department of Health and they often work with the Department of Ed, with the County Department of Ed. They're used to having to account for how money comes in and how it's spent. They get audited as well. Regarding
Yeah, I just wanted to understand that there was a plan for nailing down.
I have another question with regard to the contractual payments to the city, and you listed the years. Was there any consideration as to when during that year that payment needs to be made? Was it going to be made in installments at the beginning of the year, at the end
Well,
of the
actually
year?
says, I think, in the agreement.
Did I miss it?
It says on the effective date and each year thereafter on the anniversary of the effective date.
The effect of the, wow, what do we consider effective date? Opening date?
Well, I think
We hadn't established an
Right.
effective.
Right.
I was thinking this is going to be the conversation.
gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lathan Martinez, founder of Sundial Collective. In Red Bluff, which we're opening right now, they did it as of the COO, the certificate of occupancy. So when we actually receive that, that's our effective date. They don't care if we have our state license or, well, they do care. We can't operate without that, but with their COO, that's our effective date with them. So we have a very similar development agreement with them. And then a comment about the $5,000 and $25,000 with Red Bluff. There's a list of nonprofits we can give to, and some don't want to accept money from us. So that's how they came up with the list. There's specific, especially, if it's like teen pregnancy nonprofits, they tend to not want to take money from cannabis. So, but the ones that want to and are willing to are on that list, and we can choose from them. We give them the money and show proof of that, and they're fine with it.
This document though sounds like there will be a community fund set up from which donations to specific 501c3s will be made.
Yeah, same thing they set up, but they gave the caveat that we could choose our nonprofit, which in my opinion is how taxes should be paid anyway, but that's my opinion.
So Russ, just to clarify, and maybe Latham, you need to help us understand. Do you intend on being open by the beginning of 23 or sometime in 23? Because that should make a difference in developing. I think tonight we need to come up with this fee schedule and when it starts.
Yeah, I think if you guys gave a deadline of 2023, so that could be December 31st or January 1st, that would be fine. It would probably take us about a year to answer your question. Again, depending on planning and building. And also depending on us, making sure we get through all of the steps to actually open and build and all that. Red Bluff's very similar, why I'm saying that, similar size town, similar size planning and building department, similar building. That took us about a year to get through all of it, through everything, and we're opening the end of this month. So construction and everything took about that amount of time. So yeah, if it was, in my opinion, if you guys said 2023, you have to be open at some point in time and push that schedule back in the same manner, 15, 50, 75, 100, 100. That would probably be fair. Well, I don't know what fair is, but it would give us some time to open. We probably aren't going to operate and make profit in that first year. Basically, we'll probably open near the end of the year. So
More like a year from right now.
a year from today. Yeah.
Okay, I guess we'll need to be able to take that in consideration.
Are you in partnership with a contractor already? Just, have you worked with anyone locally before?
Well, no, I am from contractors. We basically submitted no, we actually haven't submitted our demo permit because we had to do an asbestos inspection, or right there on our demo permit. But yeah, we have two people who we're waiting to accept bids from.
Thank you.
And I would say, I don't know what the other dispensary is going to do, but they're probably on a similar timeline if they're going to do a full remodel. And I don't know, I haven't even stepped foot in that building in a long time, but these always take about a year if you're actually hustling to get there.
So Russ, I don't know, and you tell us, but this feels like this is not the right time to be negotiating essentially. And this should be done, behind closed doors and brought back to planning. If they're not planning on opening right away, I mean, is it unreasonable to say that we'd wait on this one? I mean, this feels a little awkward trying to negotiate and we don't even know when it's going to be open for both sides, for you and us.
The one thing I would say is putting a deadline on it makes us get it done too. Let's hold our feet to the fire a little bit. I think a year is totally adequate. Anyone who's been in La Casita knows it's a full, almost a tear down, but not. So yeah, I think if we put, the development agreement, I'm not sure if the effective date would be today or whenever we sign it. But those payments begin as of COO date. I think that makes sense. But it definitely, if the city or planning commission wants to put it off until after that, that's fine too. But I think end of 2023 is realistic. So.
Another question for Russ. If the planning commission were to recommend, that the city council that the city council approve this, can we recommend that pending determination of the details of the fee schedule? And then does it have to still come back to the planning commission, or can that be done and then the fee schedule can be worked out between the city and the developer, and then it goes to the city council?
Well, what I've heard so far is that let me back up. It's certainly fine to be recommending changes to this development agreement based on the public hearing, the testimony, the input you've received. We can easily change the term in the development agreement to start upon the issuance of the certificate of occupancy for the business. But the first payment would be due in 2023. That can be your recommendation as well. since it doesn't appear they're going to be anywhere near opening in 2022. So either of those changes would be fine. Right now, we've got a little bit of a, trying to find this exactly. Payments are triggered upon the issuance of the operation permit. You may actually want to get their operating permit, which is the city cannabis permit, ahead of time, because they will need to go and take that to the state for their state license. So whatever your recommendation is, we can fit that in tonight, and the city council can discuss it.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if I keep repeating my name, Latham Martinez again. The city can or tell the state that we're in good standing. We don't actually need a license from the city in order to get the state license. So as long as the city notices the state that we're in good standing, they'll approve it. Now I don't know the pathway for Bishop if they can do that, but in every other jurisdiction I've been in, that's been the case, because you apply for your state license well before you have your county stuff or county or city stuff done in every other place I've worked. So.
Yes,
Yeah.
agreed. That's consistent with other practices.
Is it appropriate to ask what the trigger is for the other item that is being considered this evening? What the trigger date for payments is?
It's
Is
20
the, hold on, let me find it for you.
Or what the trigger mechanism of when the payment?
it is, it's
Charges required for the operation prior to issuance of a cannabis business, for the cannabis business prior to issuance of an operating permit. So if the city's cannabis business permit is issued after the state issues theirs, then that's when they would be allowed to start to operate. And that's when the payment would be due.
And for the following item, that is projected to be some date in 2023.
based on the conversations
Yes.
I've had with the applicant, yes.
I do like the idea of having one policy that we've applied to both
Yeah,
applicants versus.
Well, it seems reasonable that they're.
and going forward, not just both, but any other applicant. And I would recommend some kind of some time to trigger. So like 6 months after this, that's when the payments start having to happen, and that would incentivize build outs. I think that seems reasonable.
Well, the operating permit is probably the last domino to fall in the chain. They would get their TIs done. They would get their certificate of occupancy to occupy, and the operating permit or the certificate of occupancy might be the last of the dominoes. Not exactly sure, very close in time. So
So 6
I
months
don't know that
after,
there's any reason to delay the payments.
you don't see any reason, okay.
Well, I mean, if the operating permit doesn't happen until 2023.
Right,
I don't think the first payment should be in 2024.
right. All right, so then operating permit would be that's the moment.
I mean, it seems reasonable.
Yeah,
Is that what it is as written? It's when they operate.
That's section 7.1. So.
Yeah.
I was just discussing with Elaine and making sure. So I know that NUG has no intention of trying to drag this out very long, but we also don't want an empty storefront any longer than we've already had it.
Sure.
So I think that I would recommend that your commission maybe put a date that completion needs to be, ready to open the stores in 2023, open-ended. it behooves everyone to get it going, but I think that, just what happens if something goes a little haywire and they decide, oh, we're gonna back it up for 2 more years. Because we don't have the funds right now. And I'm not saying you won't, but we need to protect the city as well to make sure that we have a full vibrant storefront going.
Yeah, the city of Reading, which is where I opened my second store, said you have to open 90 days after not making progress on your permit. So there's a store that hasn't opened and it's been 3.5 years. And they're still within their legal right to just keep it because they're making progress on their building. So I would say for sure, put it, hey, you got to be open by this date or your license goes back out and we get another applicant for both of us. And again, 2023, the other side of that is, well, if there's a snag within the city of actually getting us open, that could be a little murky, I guess. When I say that, if you've ever went through building and planning, sometimes I don't know how it works here, but other jurisdictions, it can be pretty slow. So, but yeah, I think if you put a deadline of the end of next year, we both should be open by then.
Well, if we think that a year is a reasonable timescale, what if we said October 1st of next year?
Yeah, I think a year from now would be reasonable. So
That would be my recommendation.
That gives you the whole summer of no impacts from theoretically weather and whatnot.
Just a quick, largely irrelevant note, but in section O, it says after conducting a duly noticed hearing on whatever date in 2021, I think that's 2022. Yeah.
Reflective of how long procedures.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty happy with this agreement, and it seems like the only contentious issue is when the payment schedule starts and maybe what that payment schedule is. And I don't feel, as a planning commissioner, I don't feel like we should be the ones stating that. But I do feel that it would be appropriate for us to recommend that they're commensurate between the two. And I do think it's appropriate that we recommend that, the businesses are open by October 1st of 2023. And I guess those are really the only recommendations I would have. Fee schedule to be determined by consultation with the city and the developer. City council.
Noted. Thank you.
Okay, and what is it that's required to get the operating permit that would start this trigger? What are the steps that need to happen for that?
You would need to refer to one of the expert retailers. I only work in the zoning code.
100% what you got to do. So for obviously you have to make it a building. It's got to have a full building permit, ADA accessibility, security plan, lighting plan, all of that. Once you have that, well, while you're doing that, you apply for your state license. Takes 6 to 8 months. If you're in good standing with the city, you'll get that prior to opening. Then you need your certificate of occupancy. Well, typically you need that, and your cannabis license with the city, whether that's a business license or other. And you probably actually, if it's not a business license, also need a business license. Not probably, you do.
Yes, right.
And from the city's perspective, approval of the development agreement by city council is largely the last procedural step that we need before they would be in good standing to get their state licenses.
Well, then according to section 34, time is of the essence.
Always.
Would you like to make the motion regarding?
Do we need a formal motion to recommend this to city council?
Yes, we do.
Yes, please. And I think we have your recommended revisions on the record. Elaine, you have that?
I do. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I have my notes as well.
Since I voiced those recommendations, I'll make the motion to recommend those to that the city council approve the development agreement with those changes
By ordinance.
by ordinance.
May we have the roll call? Oh, sorry. Yes, sorry. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Chair Lu,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bakta.
Yeah.
Commissioner Gaitis,
Yes.
Commissioner Leach,
Yes.
Commissioner Truxillo,
Yes.
Commissioner Lothrop.
Yes.
Motion approved to recommend the City Council adopt an ordinance to approve the development agreement between the City of Bishop and NUG Holdings One LLC with the revisions as noted with the contractual payment schedule.
Thank you. Item C, consideration of the development agreement between the City of Bishop and Alluvial Management Company LLC, doing business as Ascent, for operation of storefront cannabis dispensary to be located at 174 North Main Street. And with that, I'd like to open the public hearing, and I will have to recuse myself because I own a rental property within the 500-foot perimeter allowed for government officials.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll read it again one more time. Item 6, public hearing, consideration of the development agreement between the City of Bishop and Alluvia Management Corporation LLC, doing business as Accent, of operate dispensary to be located at 174 North Main Street. At this present moment is open for the public attending the meeting for any comments.
Public hearing is open.
Mhm.
And I'd go ahead and provide a staff report, pleases the commission. And I will keep it brief because the staff report is largely the same as it was for the previous item. The two agreements were commiserate in all terms except for the contractual payment schedule. Alluvial did negotiate with us that they did not anticipate that they would be fully operational until early 2023. And so their payment schedule began in 2023, beginning at $50,000 and then escalating to $75,000 and then ending at $100,000. I'm happy to take any questions on the particulars of this agreement. Mr. Calvert is available to speak to the business as well. But for the sake of time, I won't go into the full details of the staff report. Thank you.
Got a question, Eileen.
Sorry, is the public hearing still open or?
Yes, it is.
Why did it's a different amount of for both locations? Kind of.
In the conversation with the previous applicant, they had reviewed the development agreement and they were satisfied by the terms. And in the conversations we'd had, anticipated that they would pay $15,000. And staff was under the impression that they intended to be open in early 2023 as well, and they were satisfied by that initial payment. Alluvial had requested that payment be deferred, and that $15,000 was largely based on it being prorated with the anticipation they wouldn't be open for the full year of 2022. And so in our negotiations with Alluvial, we changed that payment schedule. They are in agreement with that.
Vice Chair, if I may, it's each of these development agreements is actually an individual negotiated agreement. In this case, they have very similar circumstances and timeframes. So the development agreements are quite similar in that respect, but they are individual and it's a separate negotiation at each time. So we might have drastically different terms from one to the other. That would be perfectly legal and fine. The city does have a goal to be, consistent in how they treat their businesses. And for that reason, these agreements are quite similar, but they don't need to be exactly the same. That's why you have slightly different terms from one to the other.
I had a question, but should we close the public hearing or?
I'll go ahead and take your public comment if you're, and ask your questions.
Great evening to all of you. My name is Robert Calvert. I'm the managing partner of Alluvial Management Company, DBA Ascent. My partner, Paul Rudder, who is also an attorney, negotiated the development agreement. So I would defer to him if there was going to be modifications that would be open to being changed. I would like the opportunity for Paul to revisit that with the city of Bishop. So any sort of negotiation is not my role this evening, but I want to thank you. I know everybody's been working very hard on it, and that's what I would request. So leave it at that. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Robert. I had a quick question for you. We were talking about the terms being commensurate between these two agreements, and one of the terms we just discussed was requiring that start of operation is October 1st next year. Do you foresee an issue with that? If that
I don't
were
see
in
any
your
problem with
development
that. I
plan?
mean, the biggest thing I think that Lathan had mentioned is the state could take 6 to 8 months. I'm hoping that it's less than that, but that's really out of our hands. But it's our job to get them what they need so they can provide us with the license. I don't see.
And I'd like to add, Commission, that Paul Rudder, Robert's partner, and Elaine and I and Russ have very thoughtfully negotiated through this, and they had some great questions. So I don't, unless you find something really obvious, I don't think there'll be anything that really needs to change in this. And so I just want to pass it on. It probably went back and forth at least 3 times between legal and everything. Important to know.
Thanks.
So public comment is over. Okay,
Could you close the public hearing, please?
okay, I close the public hearing time period. Okay, what is next?
A question for Elaine or Dustin. The fee schedule was different. In the notes, it says in 2023, they'll pay 50,000. In the text of the document, it says 15,000.
I apologize
Under
then
section 511.
for that oversight. Oh, I duly apologize for that oversight, and thank you for bringing it to my attention.
So presumably, if we were going to make the fee schedules commensurate, that would be 50,000.
Yes, it would.
Or
It's-
whatever you end up negotiating.
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
Well, I don't see much change here, so,
Otherwise, I think they're
Yeah.
identical, right?
so I make a motion to recommend the city council adopt by ordinance this motion
With the same modifications as
with the same modifications.
Do the fee schedule and the
Yeah.
operational date. Thank you.
I'll second that. That was me.
Vice Chair Bakta,
yeah,
Commissioner Gaitis,
Yes.
Commissioner Leach,
Yes.
Commissioner Truxillo,
Yes.
Commissioner Lothrop.
Yes.
Motion approved to recommend the city council adopt an ordinance to approve the development agreement between the city of Bishop and Alluvial Management Company LLC doing business as Ascent with the revisions to the contractual payment schedule.
so
I'm gonna go and get Chair Lou. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Robert.
You're welcome.
Item number 7, staff and commission reports.
Good evening once more, council. Don't have much by way of updates at this time, except that we continue to work diligently on all of the necessary ordinances and resolutions to codify the specific plan and the mixed use overlay. And hoping to bring that to your commission in October, with maybe even the potential to request a special meeting to focus singularly on that item. Thank you. That's all I have for this evening.
Any commission comments, reports?
Not for me.
Item number 8, adjournment. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the Planning Commission will be October 25th, 2022 at 6 p.m. in the Bishop City Council Chambers, 301 West Line Street, Bishop. And it's 6:57. I'd like to adjourn the meeting, please.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Night.
Bye now.
Brazil's doing well. Thank you, you guys. It just my brain today just
Don't worry,
speeding.
everybody in Lone Pine, same thing. It was a day.
I don't know what year it is.